So what's next? The next speaker, I will do a quick introduction, a very short introduction. I met the next speaker a couple of years ago in Dubai, and I was very fascinated about his conscious leadership style, but also his focus on redefining the inner happiness. He is a serial entrepreneur and founder, happiness and well-being leader, but also kind of a conscious coach and advocate for conscious leadership and mental well-being. Let me introduce you to Rajeev Daswani, and he will talk about the conscious leadership and humanizing the workplace. Rajeev, the stage is all yours. Feel free to share the screen.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for a lovely introduction. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Hopefully I do it right. I'm not the most technically savvy, so hopefully we get there. Here we go. So I hope everyone can see my screen. And you know, it's an interesting conversation. So today I wanted to come here and share a conversation with you on something that everyone has been talking about a lot more post the pandemic. You know, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're safe. I hope that you're getting back to what we were calling as a new normal. But it's come with a lot of lessons. You know, first of all, I send my loves to everyone out there. I hope that, you know, you and your loved ones are safe. But as we move on to the world where people are returning back to the office, we start talking about terms like humanizing our organization. And now we all kind of started to resonate with why that's important. And along with that comes the, you know, the important situation where we talk about conscious leadership. But just give me a second. I just realized I'm gonna have to share my sound as well. So just give me a second. I'm gonna do that one more time. So this is my 101 real quick. Share sound, and then I come back to where we are. There we are. Okay. And okay, so you know, we talk about conscious leadership, and a lot of people start to ask, you know, what is leadership? So I asked myself, what is leadership? And to me, it came up as leadership is a trait and not a title. You know, I ask you this question today. What do you think leadership is? When you read the sentence, leadership is a trait and not a title, how do you resonate? Is this ring a bell? Because for many, many years in corporates around the world, you know, I'm a leader of organization and engineering company as well for over 20 years. A lot of people were entitled with titles, right? We think this is it, we are our titles. But the truth is, when we look at the bigger picture, there's a trait behind leadership. So I ask you now, I can't see the chat, so I'm going to try to, Daniel, you might have to help me here as you read comments. If there's anything that pops up, please unmute yourself and you can share some comments. But I ask all of you to share, what do you think leadership is? Yeah, because that's really, really important for us to, you know, answer and ask ourselves. When we start to talk about conscious leadership, we talk about a leadership which is impact creating. So we put two words together, conscious and leadership, and it comes up with an explanation for something that's bigger than the everyday leadership. Now, what does conscious leadership mean to you? To me personally, conscious leadership is a leader that's connected with the essence of what it is to be human and operate through love. Now, if you think about these words that I've thrown on the screen, and I invite you today, as you try to define your version of not only leadership, but what conscious leadership should mean to you, is ask yourself, have you ever thought of bringing the words love into an organization? Is there a place for love in an organization? Can we operate through love? Is that what it means to humanize our organization? And now we're talking about love as a state of being, not as the emotion itself. But what does it mean to you? Again, on the chat, please go ahead and put on your comments on the chat. And Daniel, again, I invite you to unmute yourself in the event there's comments that you want me to take. But
yes, currently no one commented.
I do invite everyone to ask yourself this question: what does it mean to you? And as we move forward, we ask ourselves why. Why is it important now to humanize organization? Why is it important right now to talk about this topic? Well, because before the pandemic, right before the pandemic, one of the most fascinating statistics, and also probably the most frightening statistic that I read, was something like 85% of people were disengaged at work. If that does not send an alarm bell to you, then I'm not sure what will. It was telling us something. as leaders around the world, as organizations, as people who graduated from colleges, coming into the world with something we love to do. We join this organization with passion, and suddenly something happens and it fizzles out. And we saw that a huge percent of people at the workforce didn't want to be there. And what was even more interesting was a study said that 99 out of 100 people wanted a more positive environment at work. So disengagement is going up. That means less engagement and more people asking for positive work environments. It looked like everyone was asking for this. And I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see my screen with this thing, so I'm going to move this a little. So bear with me. Let's see if I can hide that.
So Rajeev, just very quickly. So there were 2 comments also that politicians should be taught about love before people, and love is the essence.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love, thank you for sharing that, Daniel. And it's a great point. And we'll talk about this more as we move forward. But what is it telling us, guys? It tells us that if we want to increase engagement, no matter where it is, including home or outside of work, right? Just for a second, as humans, we have to start to show up more consciously, operating through love, operating through the essence of being human, so that we can create more positive energy. The connection is there. It's just about us being able to reach out. So how do we do it? So I know Daniel said you have 30 minutes. I'm going to try I wanted to go as fast as I could. So we start with the first tip. These are my tips. And I invite you today to, not take notes, but to start asking yourself, is this a tip that you resonate with? What would be in your list? What is your 10 tips that, feed you to show up more conscious? To me, this was the first one, the most important one, which is to be purpose-led. You see, no matter what we do in life, if we can have a bigger meaning, something that gives us a bigger reason to go out there and fight every single day, it does something that nothing else can do. A lot of organizations would try to motivate their teams, right? Every day, we have to go out there and sell 1 million of these units of whatever they sell. And it's always inspiring through numbers. And I'm not saying numbers are not good. As a leader, I know the importance of having things that we can measure, but nothing can replace the most powerful thing that drives everybody in our team, and that is purpose. What brings you here? Why is it important? Because it gives your life clarity and meaning. So every single person who joins our organization, if we want to humanize our organization, we have to find purpose for ourselves, connected to our bigger purpose, which is the purpose of our organization. How are we creating impact? How does our life count? It allows us to overcome those tough moments where we need to dig deep and get that resilience to bounce back. Nothing can do it more than tying up with a bigger meaning. Why are we doing it? What's the impact we want to create in this world? And guess what? It also keeps us engaged. So for those of you who go, hey, I've heard so much about purpose. Why is it important? Because this is bigger than you. It's bigger than what you and I can bring to the organization. It's about what we are doing and why we're doing it. Now, when I set up my company, the Happiness Center, this is a company which I set up in Dubai about 2016. I brought in a team with me, and I wanted to tell them the reason why I believed that happiness was important, but I wanted them to also understand why it was important. So I prepared a little video message for them, and I share that with all of you. Daniel, just again, I'm going to press play. Let me know if you can hear this or not. I hope you can. Yeah.
Yep. I cannot hear it.
You cannot hear it. Okay.
At least on my side.
Okay, so let me see if I can quickly try to fix that real quick. I know it's because I'm going to share screen and sound, so give me a. Okay, and we try it again. Okay, here we go. Hopefully we are there.
Yes.
I too have a dream. This dream is about creating a world of love, where people can finally remove their masks and reveal their pure beauty, where people embrace the differences of each and live in a world of complete tolerance, where people allow each to simply be unique and special without the fear of judgment, where differences are celebrated, where people are encouraged to live their natural passion and calling, where people are allowed to experience, where well-being is promoted over dis-ease, where fear is eradicated because love is all there really is. I see a world of beauty and not a broken world. I see a world of opportunity and not a world of challenges. I am grateful for each breath and value each moment that I'm able to share this universal love with all. I see so much that is perfect. And Mind, Body, Soul, a happiness center, is simply here to create the awareness so that organizations and people all over can simply see what I see, that happiness is truly everyone's birthright.
So it was amazing the impact that this created for everyone in my organization. What I realized was that for once, everyone connected to the bigger picture. We all understood that we really wanted everyone to be empowered to find their own happiness, to be empowered to transform, to be empowered to go out there and make a difference, but to own that journey. It was no longer about us selling programs that help people find their happiness. It was about us empowering people to go out there and seek and want to make the change and want to transform. And we didn't tell them how to be happy. It was them to go out there and find it. So the second thing that once we bring the purpose into the organization, and we can do this, in a way that enables us to, create, allow people to connect to a bigger purpose, is start to focus on making trust the center of organizations. Now, this is something that's really, really interesting. And the reason why I put it on this list is because look at the next number. And here we go. Look at the next number. This statistic scared me when I read it, when it said 55% of CEOs think that the lack of trust in their organizations, this was the threat to their organization's growth. So you start to realize that we have a high disengagement problem, and we have a high trust problem in our organizations. And if we fix that, if we start to look at trust, very serious organizations, creating a more trusting organization as leaders, as individuals at the organization, look what happens. High trusting organizations jumped up to 106% more energy at work. So the parallel is clear. We needed to do something, or we need to do something globally to start creating corporate spaces that are more conscious, that are more aware, that allow us to show up and trust each other, create that vulnerable, authentic trust. But how do we do that? How do we do that? Why is that important? Well, we just spoke about why it's important, but when we create trust, it creates positive energy, right? So when we create a culture of trust, how do we do that in organizations? Well, we've heard the word authenticity, and I recently spoke about authenticity at an event, and I asked everyone, I said, how does it feel when you're able to move that mask? Now, in our lives, we play so many different roles. You might be a leader, you might be working in a team, you are a father, you are a spouse, you play all these different roles. And a lot of times we were forced by a society to wear these masks that are very heavy. They don't allow us to show up as who we are. And as a result, it burdens us and closes us out. So when we are able to step into that space where we can show up authentically, where we can be who we are allowed to be, so that we can show up the best, when we do that, one of the most amazing things happen. It allows us to become more creative. It allows us to go out there and expand in our workplaces because we love what we're doing, assuming we're there and being authentic. And the environment allows us to be nurtured, tolerant, and accepting. In other words, we receive the ability to be authentic, and everyone allows us to be authentic. And in return, we nurture the space of tolerance and appreciation and acceptance for everybody else. Now, as I know this chat's questions going up. So again, I'm sorry, we will be addressing them as we move forward. Daniel, again, anything interesting, please read out to me. But I'm going to just say here, one thing is really important. Recently, a question popped up where someone asked me, what if the environment we work in doesn't allow us to be vulnerable or doesn't allow us to be ourselves? It's an environment that shuts that down. How do you address that? So I throw that question back to all of you. Maybe on the chat, you can answer that. To me, the natural answer to that question was, we always have a choice. how important is it for us to be authentic? If we feel engaged and we can't be ourselves, can we truly show up happy at work? Can we really be open and trusting? So we always have a choice, and the environment that we put ourselves in is a choice that we can take consciously. Now, the last one on the slide is moving from doing to being. It's very, people look at this and they go, this is very interesting. I want to understand this more. This is about being in the space of doing, moving from doing. In other words, doing things with awareness. You know, when we are being ourselves and we are creating a space of trust, we also have to create a space where we are doing things in awareness. We're aware of what we're doing. We are being who we are, and the environment nurtures us more and more. The more we start doing this in our organizations, the more powerful it is for the outcome and for the way the organization comes together. I'm quickly going to open up the chat to see what I'm missing, because I see some chats over here.
Yes, there was a political, sorry, there was a question about the profits. Or not.
I love it. And that's the reason I thought, I see, till profit remains a main focus of many organizations, all positive attributes are manipulated towards that goal. Profit under any circumstance is a threat to love at large. Wow. Well, you know, it's really interesting. If you look at it, I think, Ajit, that's so interesting, because a lot of organizations have put profit before. But there is studies now. There are studies. There's a book called Firms of Endearment. I don't know how many of you have read that. There's a study in that book that talks about organizations that you know, put well-being at work and created these environments, these cautious environments. They outperformed their colleagues in the S&P 500. So there is actually a science behind the fact that organizations that practice well-being at work, that create organizational trust, are actually organizations that are benefiting, and the bottom line does go up. People are more engaged, and numbers and science proves that. So now, even in this presentation, I haven't focused too much on the science, because the science is already out there. We all know it's going to make your numbers go up. We all know people are going to be more engaged. The point is, what do we do to get there? What do we have to start to focus on? So great point, Ajit. Thank you for sharing. And when we are authentic and when we are able to get into that space, this is a very interesting quote, isn't it? I love it. So I leave that for you for a second. But we have to start to show up to ourselves. And a lot of times people ask me, Raj, how do we do that? What can we do to you know, get to know ourselves more, to be more authentic? And I always say exactly what you just said, Ajit. Yes, we can measure, but we don't have to only measure profit. We can measure other things within our own personal development that identifies who we are, so we better know ourselves, so we can know how we are showing up, how the world sees us, as well as how we see, and then close that gap between where we want to express ourselves in a way that the world sees us the way that we want the world to see us. So there is stuff that we can measure, and that's the answer to getting in a relationship with yourself, right? Now, the next two are two that I really love, and I put them in there because we talk about giving and forgiving, but let's take a second here to understand this. You know, when we think about giving and forgiving, it's not just about putting your hands in your pocket, is it? As leaders, as organizations, as colleagues, what we have to start practicing more of consciously is acknowledging each other, appreciating each other, being grateful for people in our organization, for our leaders, for the effort that we all put in. You know, it's that human element of putting patting someone on the back and saying, well done, you know, or appreciating your colleagues or your even your boss, and vice versa, right? And then forgiving. Now, forgiving is an interesting one. I know that the thought behind forgiving is, what if someone has done something so bad I can't forgive him? Now, I'm not saying we condone or we agree that that's okay, we let that go. I'm not saying that. But forgiving is really interesting. When we don't forgive someone, we hold a lot of toxicity inside of us, which increases our own stress levels and makes us feel horrible, right? So when we are able to forgive others, we do it for ourselves. And it creates that lightness that helps us, you know, be more engaged and more happy at work. So again, a great thing to start paying attention to. Ask yourself, am I forgiving? Do I do enough? Do I give? And again, I'm not talking about putting your hands in your pocket. It's also being present at that moment, right? Kindness, compassion, and empathy. I think it's really, really interesting when you talk about kindness and empathy, because we all know it's important to be kind and to bring compassion. But if we want to really humanize our organizations, we have to start to practice actively empathy and ask ourselves, what more can I do to step into someone else's shoes and understand how they feel? A lot of the miscommunication that we have in organizations worldwide is because someone didn't bother to get someone else's space and try to understand how they feel. And with that, this slide becomes really relevant, doesn't it? Our words can lift or tear someone down. And sometimes it's just being in awareness of it, being in awareness of our words. Empathy is more than just, just doing something. It's about being in awareness of, and then starting to practice that muscle, right? The more we practice it, the more we start to make change in the environment. This was an interesting one, wasn't it? 92% of employees feel that empathy is undervalued at the workplace. I found this shocking, right? 92% felt empathy was undervalued, but 96% of us want that value at work. We want more empathy. So for those of us right-brain people that think, hey, you know what? These things belong at home. This is not what we bring to work. Guess what? That's not what the world is saying. People want more of this. We want to humanize organizations. And science is again proving to us that statistics are showing us people want, and that's why they're getting disengaged with our environments. So the more we practice these things consciously, all of us, the more we can start to see change happen in our organization. Okay, this one should be a no-brainer, but I threw it in there because there's definitely a tip that we have to be more aware of. We talk about judgment and we know how important, this topic is. And of course, we always talk about how people judge others, etc. But for a second, just for a second, we have to also acknowledge the fact that many of us are so self-critical. We can judge ourselves too. So one side, we want to be authentic and want to show up as who we are. And on the other side, we can judge ourselves, or we're not good enough. And we have to start to, again, activate that muscle and say, hey, listen, be kind to yourself, apply compassion and kindness to yourself as well. And understand that you're overcoming. You have a lot to overcome and a lot of growth. And as we continue to develop ourselves, measure, learn, look at all the different things of how we show up, we can start to pay attention to, these little aspects of ourselves that kind of bring us down sometimes. So as conscious leaders, we have to be aware that not only do we have to be open to others, the fastest way is through, right? So making sure that we're creating inclusive environment that everyone can be themselves and can show up, but at the same time also allowing yourself to do the same thing. I love this quote, so I threw it in there because I wanted us to take a second to see that. But it's true. I think it's a very powerful statement, and one that we can reflect on when we think about how tough we are on ourselves sometimes. I think it's really important. These three are almost three that when you see it, it almost sounds very easy to do, but yet a lot of organizations worldwide, a lot of leaders worldwide struggle with this. And the reason they struggle with this is because they don't understand what it means to clearly communicate. It's not just about going out there and talking. As we all know, and I know we have a lot of coaches here, actively listening is such a big part of our journey. And we have to do this as humans, not only in the office, not only at organizations, not only with our clients, but also with our spouses and outside. Let's start to actively listen, better communicate. And the more we do this, the more we flex our muscles, the more we start to show up human because we genuinely care. Yeah. And this is what we need to start to portray in our workplaces as well. And then one of the biggest killers in a lot of organizations is the lack of decision making or the ability to not be decisive. How many times have we seen leaders out there say, hey, they don't pass a decision or they can't decide fast. Why? Because they're afraid of failure. Why? Because they're afraid they're going to be judged. Why? Because they've not created a trusting environment enough, or they're not able to be vulnerable enough so that they can make a mistake. You see, the good news about making a good decision, or making a decision at least, allows everyone else not to be paralyzed. But on the other side of this is that when new information comes up, when you can find some new information that allows you to make a better decision, you can go back and reverse or change the decision or come up with a better decision, right? So again, throw your thoughts. As I throw these things out there, go out there and type, what are your thoughts on this? Share some examples of times when maybe this has applied and you've seen how you've gone back and reversed a decision, but you weren't afraid to take one. And you'll see how amazing it is for the relationship building and how human the company became. Now, moving on to one that a lot of people obviously understand, we hear so much more about emotional intelligence, but emotional intelligence is such an important tool, especially now as we come back out of the pandemic. We're starting to see how sensitive we all are and how much more attention we need to put to this, because it's really about understanding how we make others feel through what we say and how plugged in we are. Now, once upon a time, in organizations, people would say, no, emotions is something that you don't bring to work. But now more and more we're talking about this being, hey, you have to be emotionally intelligent and you have to really create an environment that's encompassing for everyone, right? And look at some of the benefits that this brings to the table. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move this around, so bear with me, okay? Look at what happens with greater EQ. The greater the EQ, look at some of these things that happen. It increases creativity, increases resilience, right? It gives more clarity of mind. So there's a lot of benefits to really paying attention to emotions at work. And yes, we can bring it to our organizations if we really want to create conscious organizations. So thank you, Ajit, for your comment. I love that comment of adding you with experts. I don't know where that's going. Sorry. Here we are. This one is one that I really, truly love. And we, again, I promise you there's not too many left, and I'm going to open up to conversation, but mindfulness, no other tool in an organization can give you, can bring a company more together than this tool. Because if we start to apply mindfulness actively as leaders and as organizations, allow people to tackle the stress and build their resilience, it is a optimal tool for helping organizations. I know we've all heard about it, but for those of us, who want to know more about it, I will explain a little in a second. But look what happens when we deal with stress. Only 7% of employees survey believe that their stressed leaders effectively lead their teams. So we see stress leaders all the time, and it's really disengaging our teams. Our teams cannot handle stressed leaders. 11% of employees feel that stress leaders are highly engaged. What does that mean? That means that about 89% of our people don't feel engaged because of the stressed leaders. This is what is happening at our organizations, and this is really explaining to us why we have to start to apply consciousness and humanize organizations at work. And for those of you who wonder what want to know what this is really all about, to be mindful, it is to be present, kind, and non-judgmental, being in the present moment while we do things. And if we start to do that at work, I know there's this story where people would say, listen, let's multitask. Well, it's about moving away from multitasking, do things one at a time so you can actually get the state of flow and enjoy that space, because that's where your highest creativity comes in. And if we start to work this way, we start to see a lot of changes in our organizations and a lot more humanizing. So I leave you with this slide for you to ask yourself, what else can I apply at my workplace? What else can I nurture? What can I improve? What more can I do? Which one of these do I already have? Which one of these do I need to start thinking more about? On the chat, if you want to type in any one of these that you resonate with, also any one of these that you feel you want to work more on, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Rajeev. We have 2 minutes for the questions. If everyone has questions, feel free to write or raise your hand and I'll quickly ask him right now.
It's an interesting thing to think about. As I shared with you those 8 tips of mine, my question that I threw earlier, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe Daniel, I might even start by engaging and inviting you. Is which one of those 8 do you feel that you resonate with the most? I can put you on the spot.
Yeah, put me on the spot. Quite a lot, actually, to be very honest. All of them, actually. For me, one of the aspects which I found very interesting, and not necessarily just on this 8 ones, is more this consciousness. And also when you mentioned that, linking it not from the work side, but also on the private side.
Okay.
Yep.
I heard
yes.
You were saying?
Yeah, so literally that linking between the work and the private aspect, I think that's very important as well, that consciousness as well, and the active listening part. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for that. And I thank you all for being here today. If you need to reach out to me, well, please reach out to me on my social media. I think, Daniel, you'll have that all posted out there. So I look forward to meeting and discussing this further with all of you. And I hope that you can start to look at one of those 8 tips that you can start to apply in your organizations or in your personal lives as well. Thank you all.